Welcome to the Culture Stew podcast. I'm Maria Marukian.
And I'm Roger Moriano.
In every episode, we will meet with practitioners, authors, and all around fascinating people who share their wisdom and insights on all things related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Hey, Roger.
Hey, Maria.
We just finished our interview with Ryan Van Duzer, who is such an incredible storyteller, author of The Long Way Home, where he talks about his bike ride from Honduras back to his home in Boulder, Colorado, and shares all of his adventures along the way. There's so many things that we could we could talk about, but you were the one who brought us Ryan. So tell us a little bit about where you learned about him, what you've learned from him.
Yeah, so Ryan, obviously it was a great joy to talk to him. And let's just say really quick before I get into that, that he is absolutely the same person in our interview that you see on the YouTube videos if you follow Ryan. And I think that's what kind of drew me is that I'm a person that individually I love outdoor adventures. I love cycling. I love hiking and, camping and those kind of things. And so periodically I'll come across YouTube channels that feed those interests. And when I first came across Ryan's content a handful of years ago, I was really struck with just how genuine he is, but also he spends a lot of time traveling through communities in the United States and internationally that takes him on some really, really cool interactions with folks from very different cultures than we find in the United States, having to use his Spanish speaking skills or Swedish speaking skills. What drew me about his content is that he really interacts with and spends time with folks in a very genuine and non-patronizing way. His content is extremely respectful of the communities that he's a part of. The genuineness that he shows in his connection with the people, culture, and communities that he's a part of shines through. And of course, doing the work that we do, Maria, and the whole theme of Culture Stew is to really highlight the beauty of human cultures all around the world, right? And so he exudes that, right? And he doesn't have to do that, but he does it as part of his outdoor adventures and his cycling that he does. And it just shined through. So I thought, we have to speak to this guy. We have to get him on and talk a little bit about why he is the way he is and why he, feels the need to highlight cultures in such a way that he doesn't have to, right? But he does so because it's genuine and it's out of love for humanity that really shines through. So that all stood out. And plus his content is very inspirational. His optimism is contagious. And we just had to have him on.
I felt like I had known him my entire life. He's just one of those people who exudes neighborliness, which was something that we talked about in the interview, right? And I also learned a new term, which I love, trail magic. He talks about experiencing trail magic when you are biking, hiking, running, probably any of those forms of being out in nature, but strangers come out to take care of each other when in need. And, it's that simple law of reciprocity that when we give, we also receive so much from the giving, right? That both parties experience that positivity, and that also, if I am on the receiving end of some complete stranger taking care of me in my time of need, I'm more likely to do that, pass it forward, pass it on to others. So I thought that was great. I'm going to definitely use that term, trail magic. That was a fantastic conversation. You talked with him about this idea of the duality of radical self-reliance and also that trail magic of caring for others. So talk a little bit about that, if you could.
Yeah, I think it's so important that we got into that because in our work, Maria, we get into a lot of, situations where, when you talk about the dynamics that are happening in society, particularly when it comes to systemic oppression or what have you, or the inability or ability of folks to move forward in our society, whether it be socioeconomically or otherwise, we see that duality come into play when it comes to the discussions and the arguments that are taking place around those issues, right? That oftentimes when folks aren't able to get ahead, the blame is on the individual, right? And there's no regard for the system. And on the flip side, when individuals don't, move forward and maybe they're not making the greatest choices, the blame is solely on the system, right? And I think that what lessons can be learned through Ryan's example and the example of so many others is that both have meaning, both matter, and both rely on each other, right? That for systems to work, we have to, you know, uh, apply systems in an equitable way for folks to have an opportunity to really shine and to demonstrate their talents and skills. And at the same time, that rugged individualism matters because it teaches us some self-reliance. It teaches us a little bit more of who we are and how we can take care of ourselves, which better prepares us to take care of others and to help those systems work, right? And similarly, when you're on the trails, I have the experience of riding here locally. There are stretches where I'm by myself, and if something were to go wrong, am I prepared for it, right? And at the same time, that trail magic is quite real. And when you assume good intentions, much of what we teach in our work, we assume that the vast majority of people that you come across are good people who mean well. You can rely on the idea of community to pick us up when we are unable to pick ourselves up. So I think that all has value. His lessons, metaphorically and realistically, have valuable insights and things that it could teach us all. And I'm really, really glad we got into that discussion because it matters.
To wrap things up, check out Ryan Van Duzer's YouTube channel, get his book, The Long Way Home. He is such an incredible and inspirational voice, and we learned so much from him. So we will definitely put more information on where you can follow Ryan in the show notes, and hope you enjoy this conversation with Ryan Van Duzer. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, hello. Good to see you all.
Good to see you too. Welcome so much for coming on the podcast. We are really looking forward to this conversation.
This is going to be fun. It's an honor. It really is. It's cool to meet new people every day, and you seem like really good people. So let's do this.
Oh, well, we'll try to prove that wrong as quickly as possible. So give us a little bit of your backstory, Ryan, and in particular, any messages that you recall receiving early in life that really shaped your identity, your sense of who you are, and have really impacted how you show up in the world.
So I am from Boulder, Colorado, born and raised. I've lived here most of my life. And I would say that coming from here, this land of Colorado and Rocky Mountains and outdoor sports, I learned at an early age to respect nature and not just respect it, but want to protect nature. You know, Boulder's a very open-minded, progressive, environmental type town. And I remember learning at an early age that we really need to take care of our planet. And so that is one of the messages that was really driven into me at a young age. Maybe it was through, my elementary school upbringing, my parents, those types of things. And it's something that I still, obviously is incredibly important today, maybe now more than ever. And just, getting outside and enjoying the simple things in life. Growing up in the 80s, we didn't have iPads and all these other distractions. And, it was right, I guess, when video games were coming out, but still it wasn't huge. So for us, enjoying life as a child meant going outside and playing in the backyard with our bare feet and running through the grass or riding our little BMX bikes around town.
Well, I think that that very much that kind of attitude and that celebration of the outdoors shines through in your videos and your YouTube presence. And I think that celebration of life, of being outside, of living with a sense of adventure, and really, really demonstrating a strong appreciation for people and culture really stands out. And so I think I would love to hear how this appreciation of the things that you celebrate and the way you live came about, particularly when what we're interested in is you really celebrate culture. You really celebrate the places you are, the people you interact with. You just mentioned you love meeting new people. That's very evident in how you show up. So has that always been there for you, or is it, what forged that in? What helped forge that in you?
I was a really shy kid, almost painfully shy. And so for me, meeting new people was always hard. I would hide behind my dad or my mom. And it didn't come out till later in life. And I think I blossomed in about middle school age. I got a job running around town, maybe not running, but going around town selling subscriptions to the local paper. And I had to knock on strangers' doors all the time. And I was young, middle school age, sixth, seventh grade. And that's where I think I really learned some confidence with just talking to strangers over and over and over all night long, and trying to sell them something and being a cute little boy at the same time and telling them that I need some money to buy a new bicycle. I forget what my speech was, but that's kind of when I blossomed. And now, yes, of course, my favorite part of all my adventures are meeting people. I love going to beautiful places. I love seeing landscapes and old ancient ruins, but it's really the people that I love coming across in the middle of nowhere when I'm on my bike and I meet somebody maybe in a tiny village in Baja, Mexico, and I sit down and I have some tacos and they serve me some fresh goat cheese from the goats that live, 10 feet outside their door. And those are the rich experiences that I take with me and I truly love. And not only for me personally, but I love documenting these experiences and then sharing them with my channel and with my audiences. A lot of times when you look at the news at nighttime, you hear a lot of bad things about Latin America and Mexico and how dangerous it is. And, you can't trust strangers and all this stuff. So that's really driven into our minds in the United States that these are bad places, but there are wonderful humans everywhere. And I really take it as my job to find all of them and tell their stories.
That's so powerful. And I think that's something that has always really driven us. I know that, having spent most of my educational and professional career focusing on intercultural communication and building connections across our differences, that is something that I have consistently seen, right? That such a strong difference in the narratives between how folks from different cultural and identity groups are represented to us. And then when we go and have these conversations and experiences with them and we humanize each other, not only have I learned so much about individuals, but also their cultures and how they define themselves, but they've also learned a lot about me and, being a sort of a representative of my own country and culture. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit, Ryan, about that cultural exchange that you've experienced and where have some of those perhaps stereotypes or misunderstandings come up in your experiences traveling, and what are some of the moments of insight or oh, that's not what I thought, that have cropped up for you or for others?
I would say the biggest insight for me is that 99.9%, this isn't scientific, but a huge majority of humans are good and generous and kind, and they want to help other humans. And that to me is something I learned, luckily, at a pretty young age. I lived in Sweden as an exchange student when I was in right after high school. And of course, Sweden is not one of those countries that has a negative narrative. Sweden is, a very, I guess, well thought of Western European country. But it wasn't until I spent more time in Mexico and the Dominican Republic and Guatemala doing service projects at orphanages and other places. But I just realized very quickly that we're all humans, and we all, I think, when we go to bed at night and we think about what's important, it's connection, it's family, it's community, it's the simple things in life. And I've been able to see a lot of that. And I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Honduras right after college. And one of the things they tell us is you are an ambassador for the United States. You're not only learning about the country where you're going to live for 2 years, but you're going to, teach them and show them what an American is like. And so I really took that to heart. And when I lived in the small village of La Esperanza in Honduras for 2 years, I really woke up every day like, okay, I am an ambassador for the United States. I need to show these people at least what my little corner of the world is like from Boulder, Colorado, and what my values are and what's important to me. And that has been something that I've taken with me throughout all of my travels, whether I'm on a bike or I'm running or whatever it is. It's like I am in those moments with those people, I am the face of the United States. And I want them to come away with a nice view of at least me and who we are.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think that that's so crucial, right? I also had a career in my background where I worked in higher education, and I spent a portion of that career taking students abroad and really having them get involved in like, intercultural experiences, service learning type experiences, but not touristy experiences, right? We weren't spending our time in five-star hotels and resorts, right? We were getting out there. And what I think we appreciate so much about how you show up is that you intentionally don't do that, right? You spend time in, quote unquote, I guess, the real communities that you travel through and spend time in. And so, I think you've talked about this a little bit, but if you could expound a little bit more on why you chose to do that, why you choose to do that intentionally. What does that do for you? Because I know for my students, for many of them, it was their first time ever going abroad. So going abroad, going somewhere where you might not know where you are the next day, that's really courageous in many ways. What does that do for you personally when you do that?
When I'm traveling and I come across a family or whoever it is, sometimes in the middle of nowhere in a small village, those are the really rich travel experiences that I absolutely love. And just like when I was a boy and I would knock on the doors of the houses here in Boulder trying to sell newspaper subscriptions, I do a similar thing when I'm traveling on my bicycle. I'll go to a small market or whatever, and I'll ask people, hey, where's a safe place to camp? Or where's the best food in town? And that strikes up a conversation because they see me as an outsider. They're like, wow, what is this weirdo doing on his bike in the middle of nowhere in our little village? And it creates an opportunity for us to have an exchange. And a lot of times after, 15 or 20 minutes of talking, they invite me into their homes and they feed me a meal, and maybe I camp in their backyard and I get to meet the family and play with the kids or whatever happens. And I absolutely love those experiences. I get to practice my Spanish, let's say in Mexico or Guatemala, and they get to learn from me as an American. I've done a lot of these bike trips in far off places where they've never really met an American in real life. They've only seen Rambo movies and all the action movies. And so that's what they think of Americans, which, maybe there are some like that, but that's Hollywood. And then I come across them and they're like, oh, wow, this guy is totally different than what we're used to seeing in the movies and in the news, maybe. And so those are the experiences I absolutely love. And of course, you can go to these 5-star resorts and they are fun and they are nice and they are comfortable and you're well taken care of, but you might as well be in anywhere in the United States at a hotel because you're so enclosed in these places, you're not getting any type of cultural experience. And when I'm with these families or in these villages, I'm helping the local economy. I'm, buying food from the markets and stuff directly to the people. And so I think in a lot of ways, it's, I think it should be a huge part of travel going forward for a lot of people is to go to these places and help the local economies, but also have a very rich experience that both parties are going to have.
I think that is a powerful statement. And also, as you're sharing these stories of building community and making new friends and playing with the kids, there are also, there's there's the reality that we often experience when we put ourselves into these adventures, right? That we face some challenges along the way. And I know you've written in your book extensively about the experiences that you've had, everything from crazy weather to mosquitoes in Sweden and your bike not arriving in Rwanda and getting robbed and, in various places. So how have these experiences also shaped how you live your life and how you perceive yourself as sort of an explorer and nomad, right? It's not all perfect and happy and come in and have dinner with us, right? So how do you sort of manage those dualities?
Yeah, it's not always fun. A lot of times it's a challenge. And even today, I'm 44 years old. I go to new countries and I get overwhelmed and I'm intimidated and maybe I'm a little scared about how I'm going to fit in with this new culture. I went to Africa for the first time this year and I had some preconceived notions of what Rwanda was like. I tried to learn as much as I could. I read some books to see what was going on nowadays in Rwanda. We've all heard about the stories back in the 90s of the genocide, and that was scary and horrific. And again, the media makes it out to be so horrible that it maybe Rwanda is still like this today. Because before I went on that trip, a lot of my friends are like, oh my God, Rwanda, isn't that dangerous? Because all we've heard is from the mid 90s of what happened. But actually, Rwanda is now one of the safest places in all of Africa. And so when I go to a new place, I go with an open mind. But I think even more important than an open mind is an open heart, because if we open our hearts to people, that's where they can really connect with you. Even if you don't share the same language, they can see it. If you're just having a simple moment and you're smiling with somebody and you just let down your guards, both parties, maybe you don't really know what you're saying and they don't know what you're saying, but somehow it all works out and you have these beautiful little experiences. Maybe they only last 5 minutes, but I'm always going to remember that for the rest of my life. And maybe they will too, where they came across this American guy in a small village in Rwanda and he was really friendly and he smiled at my kid and he gave him a high five or whatever it was. And so yeah, every day is a challenge and an adventure. Sometimes things don't go the way that I have them planned in my mind, but that's what an adventure is. I don't go to these 5-star resorts where I have an itinerary and I know exactly what's going to happen all day and I know when my meals are going to come. And if it's bad weather, I can just duck inside and be comfortable and watch cable TV. That's really not my way of traveling. So when I'm out there, yeah, anything can happen. I've run into hurricanes and storms and all sorts of things. I've been robbed on the side of a volcano in Guatemala, which was an extremely scary experience. But I don't hold that against Guatemala. I've been back many times. I still love that country. They've been through a lot. I'm not excusing, the behavior of thieves, but there's a reason why some people might think, hey, look at that guy. He probably has some money and I need to take care of my family and I'm going to, do what I have to do in a way. And so I've tried to justify all these things in my mind and I learn as I go. And I still love every place that I've been to, even if I've had negative experiences, because again, the positive far outweighs the negative experiences anywhere that I've ever been.
And we could get robbed on the streets of Boulder, Colorado, or upper Northwest DC or Gurnee, Illinois, just as easily, right? So it's, I really appreciate what you're sharing because it's mindset and what I am bringing into this experience and how I'm managing my expectations, but also the choices that I make in terms of how I want to process what's happening to me, what I can learn and appreciate from it, I think is so important. And I know, Roger, that you are, speaking of challenging, overcoming challenges and difficulties, I know that you are just burning to ask our friend Ryan about a recent experience that he had.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. I couldn't help but notice that you posted not on a Sunday, I think it was. I think it was a video that was released about a week ago on a Monday or Tuesday about your experience at Burning Man, and you were one of the thousands of folks that found themselves in an unusual circumstance there, with the weather being very, very different than what you've been accustomed to over the years. And so, and I was thinking about how, to ask you this today, because if anything summed up a lot of what we've talked about already, right, which is the sense of adventure and travel and people coming together to overcome things and demonstrating the best of humanity and the media portrayal of what might be happening, right? How did all of that kind of get woven into the experience you had there? And what do you want to share with our audience about what Burning Man was like, what you overcame, and how people came together to, really pull through something that the media seemed to misrepresent?
Yeah. So I'm not sure if your audience knows exactly what Burning Man is, but it essentially is a 7-day temporary city out in the deserts of Nevada outside of Reno. It's not really a festival. It really becomes a fully functioning city where everybody brings their passion out there and they share it with all of the other citizens of this city. So there's no money exchanged. There's all sorts of arts and sculptures that are absolutely mind-blowing. I go every year because it's inspirational on so many different levels. I feel like I see the best of humanity out there. This was my 8th time going, and usually it's very hot out in this desert, and you can never even conceive of raindrops coming out of the sky. But this year, it rained a lot, and it was bizarre. And it immediately turned this ancient lake bed into a muddy mess. And when this dust gets wet, it essentially turns into like cement. And so you can't walk, you can't ride your bikes. Bikes are the main form of transportation out there. It essentially shut the city down. And I, at the time, did not know what the media was saying about all of this because I didn't have cell reception. But out there, when this happened, we were all like, okay, this is kind of serious. We need to essentially take care of one another and make sure that everybody has what they need. And burners are very self-sufficient people. We're built for this type of challenge. There are 10 principles that are part of Burning Man, and one of them is radical self-reliance. So you go out there already on a normal year knowing that you need to take care of yourself. There are no concession stands. There's no, you have to bring out everything that you need to survive with for a week. So all the water, all the food, tent, whatever you need. And so we're ready for this experience. And, what I saw again was all the best, the community coming together to overcome an interesting challenge and making sure that everybody was okay and well fed and had water, and that maybe they had safe and dry places to sleep. And you can't walk too far when it's all muddy like this. And it was pretty muddy for about the last 3 days of Burning Man. But in my little neighborhood, everybody was taking care of one another. And it was a really beautiful sight to see. And then once I got out of Burning Man, I started reading all the articles about what the news was saying about how it was total chaos and that there were Ebola outbreaks and all sorts of like crazy things, which of course were not true. It's a city of 75,000 to 80,000 people. So maybe I didn't experience everything, obviously, just my little neighborhood. But from what I saw, it was beautiful. And this goes back to my own adventures where bad things can happen, uncomfortable things can happen, but it's really in how you react to that situation. And I've learned over the years through all of my adventures that if you just kind of stay balanced, you take a deep breath, everything's going to be okay. You assess the situation and you just don't freak out. Really, that's the rule. Just don't freak out, because that's when, things go south. And so that was my experience at Burning Man this year. And it was truly remarkable. And a lot of people would tell you that this was probably their favorite burn ever because of this spirit of community out there. It was beautiful.
Wow. There's so many different directions I want to take that, because you go ahead, Roger.
Well, I was just thinking, Ryan, about, so many of the lessons that maybe people can take away from how folks responded in that moment, right? And as I hear you speak, and this is, I think, part of what drew us to what I really want to talk to you today, is that you exude so much optimism in the face of what many would feel might be really hard adversity, right? And Maria and I and many of our colleagues that do the work that we do, which is really helping organizations and communities overcome barriers and to really come together and see the common humanity in one another and to face very, very difficult challenges within communities. We often imagine what would it take, or what would it be like to create a type of environment like a Burning Man where folks can really connect, because we're living in such divided times, right? And it's a very, very hard time for some folks. In your opinion, and maybe you've thought about this, what can we do as a society to connect more, right? Because we're so, and a lot of this is on the media, of course, but a lot of it is on us, right? Our willingness to connect with one another. How do we connect in the face of so many divisions that exist, to see the beauty of that common humanity that we share, that seems to only show up in moments of crisis when we need one another and we respond, right? But we can't keep recreating moments of crisis in order for that to happen. What can we do on an everyday level to just show love and appreciation for one another?
I think it starts small in your own neighborhood. Maybe you host like a neighborhood potluck. What I really loved about living in Honduras and in Mexico is that all the neighbors are all like family, and they come out and all the kids play together on the street at nighttime, and all the parents come out and sit on their patios with the elders and the rocking chairs. And it's just a big, beautiful community where they all know one another. All the different kids are in and out of everybody's house. They're all like shared, it takes a village type mentality. And I really loved that in Honduras and Mexico and other places that I visited. But back here in the United States, it's not exactly like that, or not at all like that, where, we live in these communities, we get home from work, we park our car in the garage, we shut the doors, we have fences. We don't interact all that much with our neighbors. And it's really unfortunate. we have these really cool big screen TVs and sound systems, and we're just kind of private. I would love to see more community, more potlucks, more people getting together, letting our neighbors know, hey, if you ever need anything, I'm here for you. Or just like learning our neighbors' names. I would challenge a lot of the listeners to list 10 names of your neighbors, and it's probably pretty hard. Whereas in Honduras, they could name the entire 1,000-person village. you know so I think it starts small. It really does. And it could be as little as, hey, you know what, I'm going to do something nice today. I'm going to bake some cookies and pass them out to all my neighbors. And that sounds like super Pollyanna and nice, but it's little things like that that really make a big difference. And that again goes back to like the Burning Man ethos, where you bring a gift to the city and whatever your passion is. So maybe you do like making special food or coffee or whatever. And every day at this Burning Man camp, your gift is to set up a coffee bar or nachos at midnight or whatever it is. And I think we could do that more in our everyday life here in our communities in the United States. Just, give a little bit more, have more of a service mindset.
I mean, you could look at biological anthropology, right? I mean, this goes back all the way to Darwin's research that, survival of humans, of the species, is just as, it's not just about those that are able to adapt or, physically fit, but survival is directly related to our ability to come together and take care of each other, right? That collaboration and community building is equally important to anything related to how capable I am of taking care of just me. So I think that's such an important piece, and we've gotten away from that. And I mean, you can look at political science and see that, the scientists are talking about how polarized we are ideologically. And a lot of that is because we don't interact in a humanistic way on a daily basis with people who perhaps have different viewpoints. And so we've forgotten how to like coexist together. And it's really fascinating to be able to, connect some of these dots with the experiences that you've had, because I think that, some of the lessons that we're continuing to try to reinforce with ourselves, even as DEI practitioners, as well as with our organizational leaders and our clients, is this idea of, yes, you can do all of the work in terms of recruitment and training events and metrics for change, but it also starts with just our humanity, how we are showing up with and for one another. And if we don't take the time to reflect, to practice compassion, because it doesn't always come easily or naturally to us, then we're really missing the boat on being able to rebuild this sense of togetherness and unity.
And we can disagree with one another, but the most important thing is to disagree respectfully, to listen. Listening is something that's so huge that I think a lot of people don't do. They're so set in their ways. It's my way or the highway. And if you don't think what I think, you're dumb. I mean, that's kind of what the media does. It divides us in that way. And I think what we need more is more compassionate listening, where it's like, okay, I really don't agree with what you're saying, but I want to hear your viewpoint about why this is so important to you. And maybe I'll learn a little bit and I'll change a little bit about the way I think. So it's not so black and white. Maybe there is some gray area where we can, compromise on some things. There's something that's really big, and I talk about a lot on my channel, called trail magic. And this trail magic is something when strangers come out of nowhere to essentially save the day or provide a little treat or refuge. And even, I rode my bike home from Honduras after I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and I met wonderful people the whole way, and people would, invite me in and feed me meals. And even today, I'll be on the Colorado Trail here in Colorado, and somebody will have set up essentially like an aid station for hikers and bikers, because they know it's hard out there and that there might be 100 miles between resupply. And so they set up a full-on aid station with all these goodies, and they do it out of the warmth of their hearts, because they want to just help people, because they know it's difficult. And I think if we can create that mindset where it's like, you know what, we're all struggling. Life is hard. It's hard to be a human. Even on our best days, it can be tricky. And if you can bring a smile to somebody's face by making them some cinnamon rolls or whatever it is, it's like, oh, wow, my neighbor's really cool. Now I want to do that. Then you get inspired to do that. And then you start creating trail magic in your life. And whatever that means to you, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just the service mindset.
I love that. And I think that shines through definitely in your videos for sure. The trail magic is real for sure. I wanted to just get a little more commentary from you on the sense of community that's so valuable and important, right? That you just described, right? And the juxtaposition of that with radical self-reliance, right? Which is one of the tenets of Burning Man, and which has value as well. And I think part of what also adds to the difficulties we have in our society is that we seem to consider both of those as being at odds with each other, when in reality they complement and are necessary for each other. That oftentimes we'll hear people say that, oh, if you're radically self-reliant, you're not invested in community. And that may be the case for some folks, right? And I don't need the help of anybody else. I don't need the help of these services from a company or a government agency or what have you. I could take care of myself, right? And on the flip side, you might have folks say that self-reliance is really a bad thing because it detaches you from community. But I think both have value, and I think they can both complement each other. How have radical self-reliance and a valuing of community impacted how you go about your way of life, Ryan?
You know, when I'm on my adventures, I'm self-reliant. I bring all of my gear, all of my food, all of my water. It's all on my bicycle. So it's a very simple way of traveling and moving through the world. And I know that if I need to hunker down through a storm, I have everything that I need. I don't, need to rely on other people. And I think when you can better take care of yourself, the more you're going to be ready to help somebody else in need. And there have been times when I am out there and I run across somebody who's hiking and maybe that they're starving. This actually happened to me on the Great Divide route. This wasn't on my channel because I didn't film it, but this hiker came up to me and he was absolutely starving. This segment had taken him longer than he thought it would. And I was like, sweet dude, I got you. Like, no need to freak out. I have Snickers and all sorts of goodies. Like, you just met the right guy. And on my end, it feels really good to hook somebody up and help them out. And on his end, his day was saved and I gave him enough energy so he could get to the next spot. And my hope is that, and I think this does happen, the more that this occurs in life, the more that they're saying, okay, this guy just hooked me up. I'm going to pay that forward to the next person. So if you're radically self-reliant, taking care of yourself, you're more prepared to help others. And that goes for everyday life and community as well.
Beautifully said. I love being able to hold those two and that they feed each other, right? Quite literally.
Yeah.
When I think about your book and the stories of your journey biking all the way back to Colorado from Honduras and some of your other adventures, you share a lot of in the book and as well in your videos about your hopes for the future. When you look into the future, what does it look like? What are you hoping for?
I am excited to wake up every day. I'm one of those guys that bounces out of bed. I don't even need coffee, luckily, and I'm just ready to go. And I'm fortunate, I'm very privileged to live a life where I have a healthy body, I have a healthy mindset. I live in a great community and I really look forward to every day. And I know that's not the reality for a lot of people. And I've seen it as I've worked in developing countries around the world where every day is a struggle, and I would like to see, of course, the world come together more. I would like to see in the future, people paying more attention to their neighbors, just the really simple things. Like, yes, we have iPhones and all these amazing things that we've developed over the years in technology and fancy things. But in a lot of ways, it's keeping us away from one another, from actually connecting. Like, yes, you're on Facebook and you can see what your friends were doing that you went to high school with 25 years ago. And that's kind of neat. But I think more in the immediate community, that's what's important to me. And more of a caring of the environment and our surroundings and a safe place for our children to grow up. So when I think of the future, those are all the things that I think of. And it's actually it goes back to when I grew up in the 80s. Like, that was like a beautiful time. And I'd like to see, us go back to the important things in life. Not that we're not doing important things now, but just maybe the more simple things in life that will lead to a more connected society and a society that's more based on love and togetherness rather than I want to get a good job so I can make lots of money. It's all this I, and more like we and community.
So on the flip side, Ryan, you also you talk about your hopes and dreams in your book as well, as far as when you went back home.
Mhm.
If you were to go back, knowing what you know now and what you've experienced in the last 20 years, what advice would you give a young Ryan Van Duzer on that trek home as to how to move forward, I guess you could say, with the challenges and the opportunities you had coming up at that time?
That's a good question. And I've tried to come up with a good answer for it throughout the years. And I would just tell little Ryan Van Duzer that it's going to be okay, because I think at that age, I was really worked up about like getting that good job and having a great career and, making good money, because that's essentially what society tells you is success. Like if you want to be successful, you get good grades in high school, then you go to a good college, and you get a good job, and then you buy a nice house, and then you are going to be happy for the rest of your life. And I think one of the most valuable things I learned in Honduras is that mindset is not necessarily true. To me, at least now I'm 44, I feel like a very good place in my life, very balanced. Like I am happy because I get to go outside and ride my bike, or I get to run, and I get to connect with my neighbors. And I have wonderful neighbors who I love, and family and friends in this little town. I get to volunteer at nonprofit organizations here in Boulder. And to me, like that makes me fulfilled. That makes me happy. If it's a good day, if I get to watch the sunrise and the sunset and have some good conversations in between, and maybe eat a couple bean burritos. That's my favorite thing in life. So I would just tell young Ryan, it's going to be okay. You just kind of follow your heart, which sounds cheesy, but just stick to like what's most important in life and what's most important to you. And luckily, I learned a lot of this early on in life, living in a tiny village in Honduras in a house that barely had running water. I took bucket baths for 2 years. And when I tell these stories now, people are like horrified. They're like, how could you deal with that? And it's like, it was actually kind of fun and romantic to live such a simple life. And so when I go out in my adventures and I have my entire life packed onto my bicycle, that's all I need. That's really all I need to be happy. And I can lay in my tent and hear the wind blowing through the leaves and the trees, and I can hear the birds when I wake up. Like that's magic. Those are the magical moments in life that I think we forget about sometimes.
Well, it doesn't surprise me to hear you say any of that, because you have been incredibly inspiring through your work, through the way you live your life, the videos you put out. I myself have taken up riding weekly on the trails nearby where I live, and often think about what would Ryan do in this moment here. So it's been really, really great hearing you say that, and you are an inspiration, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And it's like I'm sitting here like blushing, and I mean, it's a dream come true to be able to tell stories through my YouTube channel and connect with people like you and so many others, and hopefully inspire people to challenge themselves. I mean, that's really the goal. And for a long, long time on my channel and my career, I kind of lived the starving artist life. I didn't make much money, but I was coming from Honduras. So I knew that I didn't need to make much money. I had what I needed. Now my channel's doing better, which is great. And it's very nice. But being able to hear from people like you, or get emails from viewers saying, hey man, I watched your videos and I pulled my bike out of the garage for the first time in 30 years and I had the best day of my life. And now I want to go to the store and buy bikes for my kids. I mean, those are the emails that really get me fired up, that, I don't need money. I just need those emails. That's what I call the emotional paycheck.
I love that. I love that so much. So in essence, what I'm taking away from today's conversation is make cookies for your neighbors.
Yes.
Get on your bike, get out in nature, simplify your life.
Yeah.
Don't freak out.
Don't freak out.
and make some trail magic.
Mm-hmm.
I love that term. I'm going to take that with me.
Yeah. And trail magic can happen anywhere at any time. You don't have to be doing a tough adventure in the middle of nowhere. It really can happen anywhere, any day. And like I said, it helps both parties, and it really does. I mean, everybody feels good in that interaction, the giver and the receiver.
Absolutely. Ryan Van Duzer, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your stories with us today. This has been such a wonderful, uplifting conversation, and we look forward to seeing more of your videos on YouTube.
Thank you so much. This has been the best part of my day, and I really appreciate chatting with you and getting to know you, and best of luck with your podcast. This is such a great idea.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Culture Stew. In a world full of podcasts, we are so grateful that you chose to spend time with us today.
Culture Stew is produced by MSM Global Consulting and hosted by me, Maria Marukian.
And me, Roger Moriano.
Are you interested in learning more about Culture Stew and MSM Global Consulting? Sign up for the Culture Stew newsletter at www.msmglobalconsulting.com and send us your stories or your questions at culturestew@msmglobalconsulting.com.
And remember to please give us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast platform.
See you next time.